We are reading chapter 21 and 22 of Rome.
This is chapter 21.
Chapter 21.
It's called Yonder.
Yonder.
Dear Rump, the miller has been lorded now. I refuse to call him Lord Oswald. He will always be the fat, greedy miller, and his sons are still ugly trolls. Your friend, Red. I had to laugh. If Red could meet real trolls, she'd see that they were much nicer than Frederick and Bruno, and less ugly besides. The gnome found me after dark when I stopped by the side of the road to rest. I sent a return message explaining where I was going. I told Red if she contacted me again, which of course she didn't have to, as it might not get to me anyways, not to tell me anything about Opal and babies. Ever. After a hard day's travel and nothing to eat but sludge, I thought I definitely deserved to eat Martha's meat pie. It was only slightly stale, and I slept better than I had in ages. The next day, I found a stream not far from the road, but nothing to eat, so I drank some of Mard's sludge. It wriggled all the way down, but it was food. For 3 days I traveled, and I didn't meet a soul. But on the fourth morning, the road split in two directions. One sign pointed to yonder, and another pointed to beyond. My heart skipped a few beats. Yonder! It seemed as good as finding a mother or a stiltskin, and maybe yonder had them both. By afternoon, I started to hear of the bleating of goats and the mooing of cows. But before long, the baaing of sheep drowned them all out. Sheep were everywhere, grazing in green fields, lazing beneath trees, or drinking at the stream. My stomach grumbled. I hadn't eaten since I finished off the troll's sludge yesterday morning. I wondered if I could slip into the pasture and milk one of the cows. Probably not without getting kicked. I walked through a small village where chickens and gnomes were scattered among little houses with thatched roofs and smoking chimneys. Women were hanging laundry out to dry, while children danced around, chasing pixies. I approached an older woman shaking out a rug. I told her I was looking for someone who might know my mother. She's dead, but she lived in yonder, and I want to find her family. The woman took stock of my tattered clothes and overall filthiness. She recoiled slightly. I must have smelled like trolls. What was her name? The woman asked. Anna, I said. I don't know her, she said, but there's another village about 5 miles yonder that has a fair amount of merchants and peddlers. When you come to a fork in the road, take the left. Thank you, I said, and started to leave. But then my stomach reminded me to ask, do you have any food you could spare? I've been traveling a long time. The woman hesitated, but then nodded. Wait a moment. When she came back, she handed me a slice of bread and a slab of goat's cheese. I wished there was something I could offer in return. But all I had was Opal's jewels, which might raise the woman's suspicion and would definitely require far too much explanation, or a load of lies. So I simply gave her my thanks and went on my way. As soon as I was out of the woman's sight, I walked down by the stream and shoved the bread and cheese in my mouth. The way I looked, I doubted anyone would be very helpful, so I washed as much dirt and grime and troll smell off me as I could. But the downside of being clean was that the pixies instantly flew to me, and I had to walk with them fluttering all over my head and around my body. Their shrill voices rang in my ears. I reached the other village in late afternoon. It reminded me of my village on the mountain. Little lopsided houses were scattered willy-nilly, and the only big building was the mill, which stood on the edge of a forest. People were outside milking cows and shearing sheep and planting seeds in their gardens. They were lucky they could grow their own food. I stopped a man on the street and asked him if he knew of a woman who lived there years ago named Anna. He said no. I asked more people, and they all said no. Finally, in frustration, I slumped against a rickety fence. All my hope was slowly seeping out of me. I brushed some pixies from my face and arms, but they just came back, giggling. You must be full of luck, said a voice behind me. I turned around and stared through a fence. There was an old man sitting in front of a wooden shack, spinning. Seeing someone spinning renewed my hope. Maybe I shouldn't just ask about my mother, but about the kind of work she did. Luck, I asked the man, brushing a pixie from my nose. The pixies, they bring luck, said the man. I snorted. I'm the most unlucky person I know. Luck can change. I watched him spin, rhythmically twisting the wool. Are there many here who spin? A fair few. We have a lot of wool. Yes, of course, all those sheep. I opened the gate and stepped closer to the man in his spinning wheel, just ordinary wool. And do they all spin the same way as you? Well, I suppose a few have lost a finger or two in the business, but mostly we all get on the same. Not much to it. But I've heard tales, stories of those who can spin wonderful things. Not regular yarn, but more, valuable things. The man stopped spinning and looked up at me with pale, penetrating eyes. I stepped back. You're speaking of the wool witches. The wool witches? Is there such a thing? Oh, yes, he said with a laugh. And they're witches, all right. Can turn wool into silk and grass into silver. Their work is quite fine, though I've never seen it. They travel to trade it. Won't trade it with anyone they know. They live there, in those woods. He pointed in the direction of the mill. Witches must like to live hidden in trees. Thank you, I said, and turned to leave. Watch your step, said the old man. I froze. Excuse me? You're stepping in my wool, he said, pointing to my feet. Oh, right. Sorry. Thank you. I walked through the little village and kept my eyes on the ground. I could feel the stairs on the back of my head. I guess I didn't get many visitors. Well, we never did on the mountain either. I glanced up as I passed the mill. A girl sat outside, combing through the wool. She reminded me of Opal. Opal and bargains and babies. My stomach twisted. I looked back down at the ground and stepped into the trees. There was a dusty little road leading into the woods, but it soon became a narrow, rocky trail, which twisted and wound until I thought I might be going in circles. Then the trail faded altogether, and I wondered if it was one of those tricky paths Red used to find her granny. These were witches, after all. Pixies flirted about my nose and buzzed in my ears. Maybe I should roll in the mud again. Maybe I should find the path and go back. But then I saw smoke rising in the distance. As I drew closer, the pixies seemed to multiply, and they danced and squealed all around me. Finally, I came to a little cottage with flowers blossoming along the hedge and a stone path that led to a door painted bright red. A red door was a bad sign. I felt all hot and twitchy. I shouldn't be here. These witches might not know anything about my mother. They might not know anything about my kind of spinning. And they might not be nice. Before I could change my mind, the door flew open and a girl stepped outside. She squealed in delight. A visitor! Oh, do come in. We have cake. And that is the end of chapter 21.